Hello, everybody. In fact, I invite you today for a journey inside the work we do at Radio France about AI for news and editorial. I'm Florent Latrive. I'm a journalist, and I'm deputy head of news, specialized in all things digital. You know, journalism is this old job that seems very, very opposed to artificial intelligence. In fact, journalism is about facts, and artificial intelligence do hallucinations. Journalism is about reality, and artificial intelligence is about illusion. Journalism is about trust, and AI make possible deep fakes. But journalism is as well about confronting the challenges of our times, and artificial intelligence is now a tool we can't avoid, for better and for worse, obviously. So it's one of my job to work with the folks of innovation and tech at Radio France in order together to domesticate artificial intelligence for empowering and strengthening the work we do and be able to understand the limits and risk of these technologies. Today, I'll explain what we do with AI, but as well what we want to do and what we don't want to do. We'll start our journey in France, in a tiny village, and then we'll visit our 44 local radios everywhere in France. Then I'll bring you inside our artificial intelligence mill, where we farm our editorial data. And then last but not least, I will introduce you what we are doing in the fight against misinformation and at the frontier of authenticity and trust. So, let's go to France. On the left, you have Espedaillac. Espedaillac is a tiny village in the south of France. It's 282 people, inhabitants only. And as you can see, the sign is a bit turned upside down. In fact, it was a few months ago, and the farmers there were very angry against taxes and norms. And in fact, as in Espedaillac, everywhere in France, we saw popping upside-down signs like this one, and everywhere it began to become a huge social movement with the farmers. On the right, perhaps you know the Yellow Jacket movement in France. It was in 2018 and 19. The Yellow Jacket movement started on the roundabout with demonstration with people like that wearing yellow jackets they get in their car. And at the end, a few months later, we had riots inside Paris and huge fights between Yellow Jackets and police, and a kind of crise of regime we like in France, and we have someday. Those two examples, and in fact, those two pictures show how important it is for us to feel the early signals we get into the society. We have, in Radio France, 44 local radios. They are named ICI, ex-France Bleu. ICI, it means ear in English. And in fact, those 44 local radios, of course, act each time for the proximity news and their local public. But as a whole, there are a network of sensors on the whole territory. So for years now, we are thinking of the way to gather what we can bring and know from the local news and from our 44 local radios to get the early signals of the French society and to feel more closely how the French society is. What do the French people think of their health, of agriculture, of immigration, and so on. So with artificial intelligence, we have launched a project a few months ago to try to do exactly that. The example is very simple. On the left, you have from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., 44 local shows on a unique topic. In fact, the topic we have chosen was agriculture. It was in December, and there were interactive shows, local shows with phone calls, local witnesses, local examples, and so on and so on. With those 44 local shows, we got the transcriptions of 44 hours of these shows. we used for that internal tools. I will get in more details on that later. We got internal tools based on Whisper, as it was said by Marianne this morning, for instance. And with all those transcriptions, we are analyzing the transcriptions to know, thanks to artificial intelligence, what is common, what is different, where are the strong examples, what are the quotes, and of course, everything is checked by journalists to be sure it's okay and we don't have any hallucinations. And all this work is fed an interview we had at 1 p.m. with the Prime Minister, Michel Barnier, which is not a Prime Minister right now, but at the time it was the Prime Minister, and the interview was done by the journalist, fed by the documents of preparation, and all the information they got from the 44 local radios. Just check the time between 10 a.m., the end of the local shows, and the beginning of the national shows. It's only 3 hours. In fact, in 3 hours, we can gather 44 hours of show and detect interesting common grounds and difference and so on. That's exactly the aim we wanted to get, the goal we wanted to reach, to be able to more precisely understand on a unique topic what kind of challenges we face everywhere in France. To analyze the transcriptions, we have used, in fact, a very common tool. We have used Notebook LM, which is a common tool provided by Google. So it's very easy to do. We don't want to use Notebook LM in the future, of course, because we'd prefer to have an internal tool for that kind of work. But as an experiment, for the time, we are using Notebook LM. We have tried again the same experiment a few weeks ago on another topic. It was about the disappearing of factories everywhere in France, of course, which is a very important topic for France and other countries, of course. And we have done exactly the same, 44 local shows on this topic, and then transcriptions of 44 hours of shows, and then analyzing, and then a national show. And in fact, we have pushed a national show as well on EC, and which is a national part of the network of local radios, and as well of France Inter, which is one of our national radio, where they hosted a journalist from EC to say how the topic of disindustrialization was seen everywhere on the territory. It's very important for us to go on that topic because we do believe that our local radio must become really sensors of French society. So we are working as well on other projects in the same kind of topic. For instance, we are trying to analyze the 44 menus of programs that are sent by all our local radios each morning, by mail only, and text. And we are analyzing them to be able to detect all the early signals we need to do a great job on that topic. We are analyzing as well all the morning shows of 44 locals to try to identify as well these early signals. Second step of this journey in our work, the challenge of organizing and producing editorial data. Once again, it's about agriculture. I think I'm a bit obsessed by agriculture these days. Perhaps I play too much with farming simulator. That's possible. In fact, on the left, we have our wheat. The wheat is our audio, of course. We have 6 national radios, 44 local radios. Our catalog of podcasts is on our platform, more than 3 million podcasts. So we have tons of audio. But we don't have tons of editorial data. We don't have tons of editorial data we can have in the mill at the center of this picture. In fact, of course, as everybody in audio, we have editorial data. We have some titles, we have some summaries, we have some tags, we have the list of guests, and so on. But it's not exhaustive. It's not complete. It's only partial. The people in charge of that work have lots of things to do and can't be exhaustive on that matter. And of course, the older a program is, the less you have data on that program. So we don't have exhaustive editorial data. So we thought that AI could help us to bring massive editorial data in our mill. So we use mass transcription, and I will get in details after. We are working heavily on that. Of course, it's not just for fun to have lots of editorial data. The aim is to go to the bakery and to have some bread and specialty breads and new cakes, in fact, new services for the public, of course, and for our editorial teams and journalists, using all those editorial data we didn't have for the time being. First step, inside the artificial intelligence mill, mass transcription. It's exactly as Anna told you this morning. We are working with Whisper. We are working with Whisper, and we have nearly 500,000 contents which are transcribed right now. And of course, it's counting. We have transcribed nearly all our contents since mid-2013 and counting. So that's massive, that's huge. We are using audio to text for nearly all our radios, France Inter, France Culture, France Info, ici, the local radio, and a selection of France Musique and Move, our radio for youth. We are working very hard on that, and especially to enhance the transcriptions, because of course you can have lots of editorial data. If it's crap, it's crap. So we work with the tech at Radio France to enhance the quality of all that, and especially on the problem of named entities. You know, the name of people and guests, the geographical names, of course. It's a domain where you have lots of hallucinations, so we are working very hard to enhance at that. The problem of the challenge of sovereignty and security is very important as well. We use Whisper, and as Marianne told you this morning, Whisper is open source. So we host Whisper on our own servers, and so we can work on those mass transcriptions on our own servers. And so it's important for us because we don't want all our data and all our audios to get outside at OpenAI or other big tech. What do we do in the bakery? Of course, in fact, we have editorial data. Let's start the game, and let's imagine what we can do with that. The first step is very obvious. It's editing assistance for journalists and for our editorial staff. As you can see here, it's a picture of our back office, which is called Atlas. And Atlas, right now, you have for each program the full transcript. You have it in the bottom of the picture. You have who is speaking. You have the full transcript. And then you can, of course, check by listening because it's linked to the audio directly. So you can check directly if the transcription is okay and so on. It's very useful for our teams, of course, because they can edit the programs for the platform and for the digital services very quickly because they can find quotes, they can find chapters inside the programs and so on. They can check very quickly what they have heard. So that's very important for everybody. And this is fully deployed in all the companies and for everybody working on editorial inside Radio France. We are trying to get a bit further. The purple button you can see is an artificial intelligence button. When you click on it, it can make some proposals of, for instance, titles adapted for SEO. It can make proposals of summary of the programs. It can make chapters and everything you need to help you to edit your program. You can have the proposals of course, tags, topics, themes, and so on. Everything that makes possible to have more and more editorial data, of course, and description of the program. This button is not fully deployed inside the company for now. We are very cautious on that, and we are experimenting it inside a few teams, expert on that matters, to test exactly how we can deploy it, where it works for the best, and so on. So it's we are exactly in the middle of the experiment and before full-scale deployment. This is digital accessibility. Of course, we have transcription. So that's very interesting to publish them, but not for the public at all, but for people with hearing impaired people with hearing disabilities, of course. So we have right now 150 shows and podcasts, which are fully described and transcripted on front. So when you play on our platform for those shows, you can read the transcriptions. We are working closely with associations in that matter, in fact, to see if it's okay for them and what we can enhance on the service. And in a few months, we plan to publish this service for all our programs. Publishing assistance, perhaps I can start by an anecdote. I don't know if you know that during ancient Rome, the top floors of buildings inhabited by the city's poorest people were only accessible by ladders, not by stairs, by ladders. If a tenant failed to pay their rent, the landlord would remove the ladder to prevent them from returning home. Isn't it a good anecdote? It is. In fact, it's an anecdote which was found inside a 1-hour history show about the buildings in ancient Rome, in Sulei. In fact, we have tried to use artificial intelligence to help our teams to find the best extracts and anecdotes inside our long shows. That's very useful, as you can imagine, because we have to make some posts on the social networks. And in fact, the anecdote I was quoting is on the Instagram post you can see on the right. We are using that kind of prompt as well and service, in fact, to have videos for the social network as well, or special service of extract of audio for our platform. So that's very useful. And in fact, the kind of prompt we are testing, because we are testing with all the teams, the prompt we can use to get some extract is very simple. For the anecdote of history, you have it in French. It's only a 3-line prompt, so it's very, very easy. Of course, we are asking for 5 or 6 different anecdotes or extracts. And at the end, 4 of them were crap, and 1 was very interesting. It's the ladder story. Introducing Jay. Jay is a bot that listens to the radio for you. Of course, now we have tons of transcription, so we can imagine lots of service. And the first service we have imagined, very simple, is to make a bot listen to the shows you want him to listen to. For instance, I can ask Jay, listen to the France Inter news bulletin and give me a summary in text of the subject covered. And please send it to me by email. Jay, give me the 3 main bullet points of the morning show interview. Or Jay, can you tell me if the guest on Les Informés, which is a debate show on France Info, got the same speaking time? And at the end, I asked Jay to listen for me the 7 p.m. news bulletin each day on France Inter, and I receive each day a mail. Hello, I am Jay. Here is a summary of the 7 p.m. news bulletin, and after you can see I have for each topic covered, each news covered. I have a title, I have a three-line summary, and even an emoji. And I can read the summary of the news. Other services. We have all those data. Some of them, we are recreating them. In fact, that's the case, for instance, for the topics covered and the tags. What you have on the left, it's a test we have made on all the news shows of Radio France for the first semester of 2024. So it's more than 2,000 shows at the total. And here, you have all the themes and topics and areas covered by those shows. So I can see in a minute that, for instance, we have talked about justice inside 218 shows. We have talked about books in 87 shows, and so on and so on. So in a minute, you can see what is the balance of the topic you are covering during time. You can adapt your editorial work to your editorial project. It's very easy to do, of course, the same with lots of other data. For instance, guests. You can split them by gender, by jobs. Do you invite more academics? Do you invite more politicians? Do you invite more women to talk about philosophy and more men to talk about economy, for instance? And so on and so on. So you can analyze very precisely what you are broadcasting and in quasi-real time. Of course, you can do as well airtime split by guests, topics, and so on, and so on, and so on. You can imagine it's very useful. We are at the really beginning of that work, so it's the kind of work we can manage to do with all the editorial data we have right now. Third step of this journey, the battle for reality. In fact, that's very important. We are working a lot of the problem of misinformation. Just say that we have inside the European Union a country, Romania, which has cancelled its presidential election a few months ago. A country inside the European Union has cancelled the presidential election because it was manipulated by foreign powers, and it was manipulated on the social network, especially on TikTok, but on other social networks as well. So we are in the middle of a strong battle about misinformation. We are working a lot on that topic, on fake news, on tools to help us to work on that topic. We are working as well on fighting against deepfake, as Anna told us for PRESA this morning. But I will show you today two examples of the kind of work we are doing with other actors, because I think on that kind of a topic, we need to work together. We need to work with other companies, with other medias, because everybody has to share and to cooperate of that kind of huge challenge. The first example is StatCheck. StatCheck is a software that automatically analyzes social networks to detect statistical claims and help to fact-check them with generative AI and official public statistical databases. It's a collaboration we have initiated with INRIA. INRIA is a public French computer lab, very important in France. We are working with them since 2022 on that topic, and we have just begun the kind of season 2 of our collaboration to go further on the topic, and in fact to use more their software to detect other kind of speeches than statistical claims, for instance, hate speech or propaganda, for instance, and to accelerate the verification of statistical claims. That's in fact very important, and we are working with two INRIA engineers who are embedded inside one of our newsrooms. in the fact-checking team at France Info, where the engineers are working daily, on a daily basis, with the journalists. That's very important for them to understand the journalist problem and for journalists to imagine new services and new tools to fight against misinformation. Other examples, Harlequin AI. Harlequin is a startup created by a French researcher, Hugo Micheron, who is a political scientist and who has worked a lot on jihadism. And he has teamed with a tech scientist and a specialist of artificial intelligence. And their tools make possible to analyze huge data sets of speeches from social networks, from videos, and so on and so on. It's possible to categorize the speeches, to map them, to see who is linked to who, the kind of speeches you can find very important and so on, and it helps you to detect who is saying what. So that's very important because that's exactly the kind of tool we need when we have foreign manipulations, for instance, or manipulations in general on social networks or on YouTube. And we need tools right now to empower our newsroom, our journalists, and to make them able to detect and to analyze those speeches. That's very important. But the battle for reality is not only a question of fight against misinformation. It's not only outside our medias. The battleground and the front line of the battle for reality is inside our mind as well, and inside our very production. We have tried a few weeks ago to produce a 100% episode of a show with artificial intelligence. It was a show of an episode of a show called Les Pieds sur Terre, The Feet on the Ground. Les Pieds sur Terre is a show on France Culture, our cultural radio, which exists for more than 20 years. And it's exactly a show about reality. It's a show where you can hear witnesses telling their real stories in their real life. And of course, that was very interesting to try to use artificial intelligence 100% on especially this show. Of course, not because we want to fool anybody, but because it was very interesting to have a debate about that with the public, but as well inside our radio, to know what are the limits of the technology, what kind of questions it raises for us, and so on and so on. So we've done that during the Summit for Artificial Intelligence, which was organized in Paris at the beginning of February. It was a several-month work, of course. In fact, we have used more than 1,000 real episodes of Les Pieds sur Terre. Those episodes were put in a machine learning software, which learned how to write a simile Les Pieds sur Terre episode. And that was done. In fact, the software, the bot, has written 2 stories, façon Les Pieds sur Terre. The both stories were inside a cable car. That's what you see on the image. And there were stories with love, with terror, with fear, with a morality at the end, and so on. That was very interesting to do. And afterwards, we have used, of course, text-to-speech technologies to produce an audio version. The audio version was broadcasted on France Culture, of course, with lots of warning, with a debate afterwards, and so on and so on. Nobody, once again, was fooled on that experiment, which was made only for debate and pedagogical use. Here is the conclusion gave by Sonia Kronlund, who is the producer of this show and who has decided to do the experiment. She says that this test acts like a magnifying, caricature-like mirror, prompting us to step away from what we tend to overdo. So it has revealed the default they have. We can't tell it's an imitation. The artificial intelligence was unable to replicate what makes each person's speech unique, and it obviously raises questions in the future. How can we assure listeners that what they're hearing is genuine? Of course, that's at the heart of the question we can raise right now. And questions? We have lots of questions. You have lots of questions, and I'm not sure I have answers. But for sure, I'd like today to burst 3 myths and to give a few convictions and principles I believe in. 3 myths, very important when you work with artificial intelligence. The first one, is artificial intelligence magic? Marianne told us this morning, no, it's not magic, but it's too often black boxes. AI are too often black boxes. You don't know exactly when it hallucinates. You don't know exactly how it works. And for lots of service, they are provided by big tech or companies that are black boxes as well. So that's very important to have that in mind. Second myth, is artificial intelligence easy? No. I told you, it's lots of work. It's lots of failure. You have to work and to work again and to try and to hesitate and to go back. So it's not at all easy, but it mimics ease. When you chat with a bot, it's very easy to have a kind of, it's like you are drunk with AI, kind of AI euphoria. You forget it can be dangerous. You forget it can hallucinate. You forget it's not easy. The third myth, in fact, will artificial intelligence replace humans? I don't think so, but it can hurt a lot the quantity and quality of many jobs. And it's very important to have that in mind as well. 3 convictions to answer to those myths and questions I've raised. In fact, when we are working with all the people about AI in Radio France, we are trying to empower people, journalists, editorial staff, and all the staff at all, and not to replace them. That can seem nearly obvious, but it's not so easy. Each time you try to make something, you have to wonder, you have to ask the question, is it something that can empower people and staff, or is it something that will just replace them and do bad stuff? Second convictions, we make speed bumps everywhere. In fact, to fight this artificial intelligence euphoria I've told you about a few seconds ago. In fact, speed bumps, you can put them in your interfaces. For instance, when I show you the purple button we have in our back office to help people get titles or summary, in fact, you can't get a title just by one click. If you do that, for sure, people will get in that AI euphoria and they will click on the button. They won't even read what the AI has given. And we will have crap at the end. So that's very important to have speed bumps everywhere. That must not be easy to get something directly out an AA for everybody. You must warn them with message, with speed bumps, and so on. Third principle, of course, it's about autonomy. Autonomy of journalists, of editorial staff, as a matter of fact. But of course, autonomy of the company, of the radio itself. As we told with Whisper, for instance, that's very, very important that Whisper is on our own servers. And in the future, we have to work using AI inside our company, on our own servers, with models very environmental friendly, and so on and so on. That's very important, and that's a goal we should have in mind. At the very end, in fact, artificial intelligence is here to last, and we will have to work with it for the years to come. But at the very end, in the radio, in our jobs, I think only two words matters: trust and authenticity. Because at the very end, we are real, and our audience is real. Thank you. We have time for questions. Yes, Lee?
Excuse me. Where's Greg?
Hello. Thank you. I've got two questions. I've got a question for you guys and for you, Florent. By raising your hand, who is facing the challenge to deploy AI widely in your organization? Like being able to deploy AI tools, technology at all stage of your daily job in your companies. I've got a trouble. Who is raising your hand? Not that much. And you, Florent, do you have a kind of difficulties?
It's not, in fact, you know, we work together with Mathieu. Mathieu is one of the folk I was quoting a few minutes ago. In fact, the problem, the challenge we face, it's very different to have experimental deployment of artificial intelligence in a tiny team, in your tech team, inside AI specialist, and to deploy it at scale. Of course, in Radio France, as in all the radios, the question of voice is very important. Voice is at the heart of the trust we have and the public have in what we are doing. So, of course, when we are doing some experiments like I told you about Les Pieds sur Terre, for instance, with voice and synthesis of voice, of course, that you are lots of questions, and very deep questions, because for all the members of the company, you have suddenly a technology that could replace them or do something they do, not with the same talent, it's not professional and so on, but you can imagine how fearful they are. So I think that's really a challenge for all of us. The time of experiment has finished. We are right now in front of the time of deployment, and it's a hard challenge. A question there in the middle. I see it.
Thanks. Excellent being in the middle when you want to ask a question. I'm Eric from Swedish Radio.
Hi, Eric.
I was just wondering about when you talked about what kind of topics that you analyze the live radio. Do you do that continuously, or to feedback to the program makers, or is this something that you do once in a while, or how do you do it?
No, right now, so it's not continuously. It's of course afterwards. So we analyze the programs after the broadcast, and it's experimental for the moment. So we don't give them to programmers and journalists, but we are starting to work with some of them to show them what we can do, the kind of data we can collect, to build with them the kind of dashboard which would be useful for them. And I think that's important. It's not only to analyze and then to get inside a newsroom and say, you are obsessed with, I don't know, agriculture, for instance, and you don't cover at all society. But that's not the case. In fact, we want people to be empowered by those data. So we are working with them to decide that.
Have you any idea of the interest in the newsrooms of this analysis?
In fact, each time we are explaining it's possible or showing the beginning of this work, we have lots of interest. But fair as well, fair interest.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leonard, also from Swedish Public Radio. I just wonder, you used this project with agriculture to use those local stations to be sensors. What in just that specific project did you sense? Was it? Did you get to extract the good questions from those transcripts to the minister?
Yeah, in fact, we didn't extract the good questions.
No.
We have tried lots of different prompts to analyze the 44 hours of shows. And the question we asked with the prompts were about mainly what is common, what is different. Can you put the main topics covered on a map of France? And each time you have, for instance, a common, we had lots of things about farmers' suicide, for instance. So it was everywhere in France. And it was very interesting to see that. In fact, that was a very hot topic, the farmers' suicide. And each time, the artificial intelligence gave us examples. So in Guéret, in the Creuse, they talked about farmers' suicide, and they tell this story, and so on. And that's why we are using Notebook LM, because Notebook LM, when it gives you examples like that, gives you as well a link to the source. So we can check directly if it's not an hallucination. That's, of course, very important. And you can have a document checkable. And that's at the heart, of course, of the project and the challenge we face in that kind of stuff. So it's not about having questions. The journalists do that very well. But it's more about gathering topics and examples and use them to feed the question of the journalist and the work of the journalist. And in fact, of course, at the end, the interview of Michel Barnier, the Prime Minister, was fed, of course, by this document, but was mainly fed by the work of the journalist and their knowledge of the topics covered.
Thank you.
Hi, here. My name is Sergio from Prisa Media Chile, and I would like to know if you are using any kind of tools for AI in videos, because radio also is video.
Yeah. We use AI for subtitles, like a lot of persons. And we are trying to use as well AI to get extracts, as I mentioned, for a post on social network with the story about ancient Rome. We are using as well specific services to help us to cut some extracts from long shows we have in video, because lots of our shows are filmed, of course. And so we use tools from startups, for instance, who do that, and we have other experiments. But of course, that's a topic important for us as well.
Is there one on this side somewhere? One of you have a question? Yeah, just there. There's a microphone. Just coming.
We have
Come
lots to
round.
make.
Do you want me to take it? Yeah. Well, I'll do the second
Thank you.
half. Okay.
Thank you. Brian Rowan from Clyde Broadcast. You discussed the show, a long-running show, where you'd made the episode completely with AI, not to fool anybody, but for debate. What was the audience, what was the listeners' reaction to the quality of that show?
No, that was very interesting because, of course, we have received, as a producer of the show, have received tons of emails and reactions, of course, tons of it. And in fact, that was really interesting because it was well understood. In fact, the quality of the show itself was not as good as a real show. It was exactly like Sonia told in the quote I've showed you. It was pure imitation. You mimic something, and you feel it's mimic something. But for the people and the reception of the audience, that was really interesting because that raises lots of questions, and they understood very well, in fact, what is at the heart of the editorial proposition of Les Pieds sur Terre, which is reality. In fact, once again, it's a pure, real show about reality. We can't do better. So the way we have used artificial intelligence for that matter was received as a kind of not at all like a provocation, but a very clever way to question the time we are in and the role of reality and genuine stuff in our work. But of course, as I said, we were a bit afraid, to be honest, before broadcasting the show. Because you don't even know, we all know the George Orwell story, which is fake, in fact. Nearly nobody thought that extraterrestrial would invade New York. But we have this myth. And of course, we were very afraid that people would think it was a real story. So we have made lots of warning inside the show. So the show, for instance, is interrupted several times during the show to have Sonia Kronlund, the producer, re-explaining what is going on and analyzing nearly in real time what are the limits and so on and so on. So that was done for that. And at the end, that was well understood.
Hi, my name is Paula. I'm from Finnish Radio. And since you've obviously done lots of proofing and testing, I'd like to know whether you've ever tried AI in translating foreign language simultaneously. I mean, like doing it so that, okay, just like Trump is having his inauguration address, have you tried to use AI in translating it on the go so that not via voice, but via subtitles?
No.
Has anyone?
We are using it, in fact, for conference or to help our journalists when they follow a show, for instance, or a speech elsewhere. But you have to rehear each time you do. And as I know, but perhaps Mathieu knows this topic better than me, as far as I know, the technology are not mature enough for real-time translation. And it can be helpful, but if you don't want to bring mistakes to the public and false and fake news, I think that's you have to be cautious with that kind of technology for now. And I see Mathieu and Marianne doing. You do agree?
More questions? No?
I think that's okay, Lee.
What's that, sorry? They are, yes. Yeah. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, then
thank you very much.
Huge hand to Florent.